Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 64 of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I am your co-host, I shall say Patrick Hewitt, and in fact, I probably should have said host because my partner in crime, Santoki, is not with me today. COVID has finally got him, so it's me on my ones today doing this particular episode, but I'm super excited. I'm really excited about this particular episode. You know how we already do on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, where we're all about speaking to what I call the key stakeholders in the game, in the Caribbean game across the region, in the different islands and countries, and so on and so forth. And today, I'm excited to announce that we have Dr Kishore Shallow. So many different titles to give for Dr. Shallow that I don't even know which ones to start with, but he is the current president of the Windward Isles Cricket Board and the vice president of Cricket West Indies. And if you don't know, and so many people in West Indies cricket say it, one of the sharpest minds in cricket administration in the region. So really excited to get Kishore on and do what we do and chat cricket. But Kishore, over to you. How you doing?
Thanks, Marshall. I'm great. Thanks for that intro. It's a privilege to be on your show, as I mentioned when you reach out. I'm a fan of the program, one of the programs that I really enjoy watching, very analytical and so on. So really a pleasure, being part of your show.
Most definitely. And Kishore, like when I was planning this episode and in terms of what we're going to talk, there's so many different angles. And as ever with all guests that come on, we always throw it out to supporters of the podcast and say, are there any questions that people have got? And I'll come to those at the end. But I think the first thing we should do, because, and again, we always say this, a lot of our listeners are within the diaspora, within the UK, the US, Canada, etc., as well as people who may not be of West Indian origin but have a great passion for West Indies cricket. So first things first, Kishore, I think the thing we should do right at the very beginning is, who is Kishore Shallow? I might have given the titles at the top of the show, but if you were to describe Kishore Shallow and your accomplishments and what you do in the game, what would you say?
Well, I would start by saying I'm a fan. I'm a massive cricket fan. It started there. And I'm still a fan. My aspiration, my leading aspiration as a youngster, probably like you too, Marshall, was to play for West Indies, right? And so I started there, following cricket in the 80s. I was born in 84, only 38 currently. So I was born at a time where, we were dominating cricket still. We were bowling out teams for whatever we made, whatever target we set. And so, I spend time watching cricket with my family, celebrating those victories. In between those break, whether it's tea time or lunchtime, I run outside and grab a bat and try to be like Brian Lara, Jimmy Adams, and these other guys. So I've always been a massive cricket fan, and continue to be that way. I played a significant amount of cricket growing up as well, and then obviously went through administration of cricket eventually. But apart from that, this is something that people don't understand, Marshall. Outside of cricket, I do have a professional life as well, and in that, I'm an IT and business consultant, right? But I know we won't spend much time on that today.
Do you know what? We might have to, because I didn't even know that myself, So,
yes.
But then let's quickly touch on that. So, how much of your time can you how much percentage would you say is dedicated towards the consultancy and then obviously cricket administration as well? Do you do a fine balance in that between the two?
Yeah, I've managed to do a good balance over the years. And one of the things that has afforded that is the fact that I'm a full-time consultant. So my hours are quite flexible,
Mm,
right? And so it allows me to, you know, be in administration of cricket, which sometimes come across as full-time, to be honest. It never stops, especially when you are involved at the different levels like I am, West Indies, Windwards, and even St. Vincent.
mm.
So it is non-stop, but I thoroughly enjoy every aspect of my life. And so it's not really work for me, it's really, giving back and improving, especially when I see results, you know, it's great. So I enjoy every aspect of it, but cricket, I would say, is passion, and I do everything else, professionally and for my living otherwise.
Well, so many questions I've already got to ask. Now, let's touch on Kishore Shallow, the player, because when I said I was getting you on, and I was speaking to some people saying, yeah, Kishore's going to come on the show. I think most people just looked at it as well. Well, he's VP of Cricket West Indies, so you're going to talk administration. But when I was looking at the Vinci Premier League, who did I see but Kishore Shallow's name playing in the Vinci Premier League
In,
since lockdown and onwards? So talk to me about your own actual career as a player, Kishore.
I tell you, I wouldn't want you to bring up what I did in the VPL because I played in the President 11, and let's just say I wasn't the most productive player on show. you know. But I mean, I grew up playing a lot of cricket. My like I said earlier, my aspiration was always to go on and play, at the highest level. And so I dedicated most of the early part of my life playing cricket. So I played for, I started touring as a youngster, probably about 12, 13, going to Barbados every Easter and every summer to play cricket for whether it's school or my country at the youth level. I played for Windward's youth level as well. So I played in the West Indies tournament, and it's playing and meeting new friends and so on, and the appreciation for the Caribbean is what even what drove me more to wanting to be a professional cricketer where I could do that full time, traveling and meeting people. So after I played through the ranks of youth cricket, then at around age 17, 18, I was actually invited. I was in college and I was invited to be in a training squad for what is now CCC, Combined Campuses and Colleges. And that was the first year that they were actually playing in Red Stripe, which it was called Red Stripe 1, the cricket team. And so at that time, I tried and I actually made the team. So I was a part of the very first Combined Campuses and Colleges team that played in a regional tournament.
Just out of interest, what other players would have been part of that people would recognise as who went on to do it okay?
Andrew Coley,
Yeah.
coach, and he has coached West Indies as well. I think he was the vice captain of that team. I was a big, he was the Andrew Richardson. You know Andrew Richardson as well. Then and there are a few other players who would have, been part of that team as well. Of course, it's I think that was about 2000, there about 2001, somewhere there. And so, I was part of that team. And then not too long after that, in fact, the intro to being with those guys, because I was still in college, and most of those guys at the time, they were in university, right? And so it gave me a different perspective then that I could actually play cricket and explore my academics, because my mom was always pushing me in that direction to go on after university and get a degree. And my only reservation at the time was that, well, I probably would not be able to explore cricket as a profession. And I thought I had to choose. But when I saw these guys were actually at university and given an opportunity to play professional cricket as well, that suddenly opened my perspective on cricket. And so I decided not too long after that to study. But then, Marshall, interestingly, I chose to study in the UK because I always thought I came to UK when I was very young with my father, and I remember him going in. It was in the summer, of course, and I remember him playing cricket every weekend. We spent a while there, a few months, well, about 2 months, and every weekend he would play cricket. And I thought, well, that is great if I could play cricket week in, week out, and just enjoying cricket and developing my skills. And so I always had that in mind. I chose the UK for that purpose, to come and study where I could play cricket. And I played a lot of cricket there. I played with guys. I was based in East London,
Yeah.
Leighton, and I played with guys like Maurice Chambers, who played for Essex, Donovan Miller, who is a coach now.
Yes.
And these guys I would have played in, and I played, across the UK. So I maintained that passion, finished studying there, and returned home at about age, because I did my bachelor's and master's at the same time in the UK. And then after that, I can recall returning home at about age 25, about.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said to my mom, well, I have this degree now. I'm gonna park these up, and my focus is on cricket full time. Right? And she thought, well, you're crazy. You need to find a job now, and you have qualify and get a good job. And I was really formed that I was going to take up cricket until playing a bit more. And then I started to identify a few challenges, from an administrative perspective, because I always had a keen interest in understanding what is doing. In fact, so much so that my dissertation for my master's, MBA, I actually studied cricket clubs in UK, right? In terms of the commercial arm, how they generate revenue for the club and the club structure and all that. So I always had that kind of interest, because it's something that I believe that still needs to be developed in the Caribbean club structure.
I was about to say to you, as soon as you said it, I was like, well, boy,
correct.
The whole of the Caribbean needs that.
Exactly. So then I always had that interest that someday, I would probably be able to help develop the club structure to be similar to England, which in my opinion is quite a fruitful system. And the more I observe and return home, I end up making these national teams and men's national team after that. But I still was not satisfied. And then it dawned on me that maybe my contribution would probably be more in administration than cricket. And that is when I then, started to venture out and made the transition from an administrator, from a cricketer to an administrator.
Listen, that's an in-depth story there, and actually, as you were saying it, I was thinking already there should be people listening to this thinking I need to pick Kishore's mind, because then your journey, even with you only giving us like a kind of a little glimpse into it, there are probably similar people to you who may well have started out cricket. I'm going to play, and then realize that actually the administrative arm is where they need to be. So it's an important story. But let me go a bit more specific and focus on SVG, because how do I phrase this now? One of the let's say weirdest things in West Indies cricket is, obviously, for those who are outsiders looking in, they see a conglomeration of different islands and countries. And I always, even myself as a Jamaican first and foremost, I look at the Windward Islands, for example, and we look at the big four of, like, say, Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, and then SVG. But focusing specifically on SVG, how easy or hard is it to, first and foremost, you said you got to the SVG national team, but how easy or hard is it to progress through SVG cricket and then even then get yourself into the Windward Islands setup to then get yourself through to West Indies? Now, I could be naive here. The reason why I'm asking this question is because traditionally within West Indies cricket, people always say it's much easier for the bigger cricketing nations within the Caribbean, for whether you're Guyanese, whether you're Trini, Jamaican, Bajan, whatever it might be. And I always look at the Windward Islands, Leeward Islands, and wonder, how is it a more difficult journey, or would you say actually no, it's the exact same thing? Like, how do you go from one island within a group of, well, it's more than four, but I'm saying those four, to get to the national structure of the Windward Islands team?
Yeah. And later in the show, I suspect we're going to get to the administration.
Yes,
side,
yeah.
Explain that probably even more, right? But it is difficult in that you have to. It's like you're going through different layers, and at every layer you have a different child, right? And you remember you're competing at every level. So nationally, so you have to first compete at the club level. then you're shortlisted, picked in a squad to make the national team. And then after that, you have to then compete again in a sub-regional tournament, right? Which obviously are 4 islands, right? And I mean, just think about it. You could be a very dominant player nationally,
Yeah.
and then because of the situation of Leeward's face a similar situation as well, and West Indies too, right? But you could be in the best of form locally, and then you have what, a handful of matches to prove to the selectors to be picked for your sub-regional team. So in this case, Windward's team. And then you turn about that tournament and you have maybe 2 bad games.
Yeah.
You could either be dropped from the team, from the playing 11, or you could pick up an injury and you have to wait an entire year, again, maybe 2, to prove to those same selectors at the sub-regional level that you're good enough to make Windward's team. And remember, there are already players there who have, so what has happened historically, and I've spoken to many past players, and they will tell you how in the 80s and so on, how difficult it was because there were even more players then than now, right? And so many players would stop playing because of the patience that was required, that you had to wait your turn. And while waiting, they had to explore jobs, they had to take care of their family and all this. So it is extremely difficult in these parts, Marshall. But that has given me an even greater appreciation for West Indies cricket. And whereas you mentioned that people, by and large, especially from the small islands, would say that it is easier if you come from big territory to get into West Indies team. And they're referring to insularity as well. But just imagine that insularity existing in the Leewards and the Windwards as well, right? So there are multiple factors, but that contribute to it being much more difficult than I would say. Let's use, for example, a country like Barbados, and I can speak of Barbados because I've lived in Barbados, right? I've spent quite a bit of time. Barbados is like my second home, to be honest. So if you're a club player in Barbados, then week in, week in, week out, they're seeing you in action. The selectors are right there. They see you training and everything. In the Windwards, Leewards, you don't have that because, apart from the sub-regional tournament, then the national the Windward selectors probably don't even have a clue what you're doing, right? So it is a challenge, but it's certainly one that I believe with creative administration, those things, could be fixed.
And I mean, I guess looking at the administrating part, so your first, well, it wouldn't have been your first, but your first Caribbean-wide recognized position would have been when you became president of the SVG. Well, in fact, you still are, right? You're still president of?
No.
Oh, no, okay.
No.
So when you became president of SVG Cricket Association, what were your steps to get to that particular position?
It happened relatively quickly. I was first the assistant secretary of the organization, and I think within a year and a half or so, I became president in unprecedented outcomes, really, in an unprecedented way where no confidence was moved against the previous president. And so the position became vacant, and then I was voted or elected as the president, and that was in 2014, and I served up until 2020, I think it was.
And I think if I pick out some of the highlights of what you've done, in fact, the thing is, I'll pick out some of the highlights, and I reckon you're probably going to say, well, actually, I was happier with some other things, but SVG had a national academy set up in 2017, for example. And the reason why I refer to the National Academy is not every island or country within the Caribbean has an academy of sorts. It's something that, as a fan, I speak as a fan, never mind the podcast, it's something I'm at pains to wish that we could see in other islands or copied. Obviously, we've just seen CCG is effectively becoming that now in Antigua. But talk me through that academy process, and I guess talk me through some of the things that you look back on as your time as president of the SVG Association. Think, you know what we did there was that was good. Like that's really put some structures in place for the development of cricket within the region, within the island. Sorry.
Yeah, but SVG has always been, known for cricket throughout the West Indies. In fact, historically, I was doing some research, and I realized as early as 90, early 19, maybe 40, something thereabout, there was a team that traveled from England, and they played in Barbados, and they were beating all the other teams. And it took a team from St. Vincent to beat that English team. I actually brought it up with my Prime Minister, Gonsalves, sometime, and he laughed and he said, "Yes, he recalled, that." And so we have always had, great players and very good players over the years. In recent time, in the 80s, 90s, we had Ian Allen, Nixon, McLean, Cameron, Coffey, and these guys. But what I found is that we still had a very amateur organization. So much so that the organization was not even registered, right? When I took office in 2014. So I had to ensure that we were registered as a non-profit organization. So started from scratch. Then I did my research again. This one was more easy, much more easy to confirm that even though the organization was officially formed in 1947 thereabout, I was only the sixth president of the organization. Right? So, Marshall, let me put it into perspective, right? There were persons, and not discrediting them at all. In fact, much commendation to them. But they served for 20 plus years and these things. It's a lot of time to be volunteering in an organization.
Yeah.
And I'm of the view that there should be limited time of leadership in organizations like these, non-profit organizations especially.
Yeah.
And so I had to review and revise the constitution to introduce term limit as well. Hence, I'm no longer the president because I reached my.
Of course, your three stretches of 2 years. Yeah,
yeah. Right, and those things I think were really important steps for the organization. So much so that since my tenure, I've transitioned to another president and could help with the transition as well, as opposed to going to an election and be elected and all of this thing. The academy is something that I always believe that you have to have something to nurture young talent and to encourage them as well. And, just to have a better understanding working with the same kids over and over. So we introduced, I can't remember the year, but we introduced an academy. First year we did it, we had I think must be probably 15 or so players, could be more, boys and girls. And then a year after, we actually increased it to 45 players, right? And that meant giving them a stipend to attend practice sessions, giving coaches a stipend to work with them. And, unfortunately, COVID came around just when we supposed to start seeing the fruits of those. But I think that was an important step for us to make as well. Also, remember I spoke to you earlier about studying clubs in UK. And so one of the challenges with these organizations is obviously resources, limited resources.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
When I came in as president, we had very little resources there, So our hands were tied in terms of what we can do. We were barely pretty much relying on hosting matches from Cricket West Indies or West Indies at the time, West Indies Cricket Board at the time, to have those matches and generate a little revenue or a little savings from those. And that is how the organization survived. And I thought that this cannot continue, and I set up a total commercial arm. So in addition to registering the company, the organization as non-profit, I also registered a for-profit organization called Vinci Sport under that. And so we were able to do all our commercial activities under that entity. And obviously all owned by the SVG Cricket Association. And we were quite successful over the years by generating so much so that we were able to, fund series, fund tours, and just invest, sponsoring children, our young cricketers, give them scholarship to ensure that they stay in school. and all these different things are stuff that I'm very proud of. Being able, I always believe in balancing cricket and academics, or sports and academics, because I don't limit it to just cricket. Whatever, you know, whatever opportunities were there to invest in cricketers. In fact, one time we actually even give some sort of financial package to other athletes, in football and track and field and even swimming. So it was always my focus on sports development, but balancing sports with academics. And we ensure that we were in a position where we could fund those things as well. And we I mean, it was one of the things I learned then was about mobilizing, obviously, an organization. So we had a very good executive that were obviously focused on cricket, and that leads right back to the cricket centric approach that President Ricky Skerritt is leading with Cricket West Indies. And once we had those administrators on board on the same wavelength thinking of cricket, then we were able to accomplish quite a lot. So I think from there is when I then made my probably impress, I would say, others in terms of my leadership of SVG Cricket, which is then I was recommended from Windward's board to be a director of CWI.
Now, it's interesting you speak about the commercial arm, and so I still feel that is an area and an aspect of cricket across the region that we are not. So you're telling me about what you're able to do at SVG. Would it be fair of me to say that we are not seeing that consistency across the region in terms of maximizing commercial arms of cricket boards? Now, you may, I might have thrown you under a bus there, because you may have to tread carefully in terms of how you answer that. And I hope you catch, because I'm not actually trying to call out any names or anything like that, but I just feel as a fan that what you're describing there isn't mirrored everywhere, or not to the maximum that it should be mirrored. Or am I being harsh in saying that?
I think many would share that same sentiment like you. I think that we would all agree, if we are quite honest, that there's still untapped resources out there, revenue streams that we can tap into and improve on, certainly our commercial aspect. And it's something that we are quite mindful of as Cricket West Indies. I could say certainly that President Ricky Skerritt and myself, we understand that fully. What we are doing is taking things in strides and steps in a phase approach in terms of getting there. And nothing is going to be done overnight. It's something we have said in 2019. Improving our performances, as you would appreciate it, that is key to maximizing your revenue. People want to, our corporate West Indies want to be associated with winners mostly. And yes, we do have a very strong brand across the world, but as seen in 2016, as seen when we won the Test series against England in 2019, and recently again, fans are buzzing, and fans include CEOs of companies, commercial directors of companies. And so the conversation then becomes easier to have with these people when we are winning. And so the approach of a cricket-centric organization and getting things right with the cricket is all a build-up towards that, right? So I do agree that in the future, probably very near future, we could probably, explore a bit more, more to capitalize on those other revenue that could be out there. But there are different things, I'm sure, that we'll see being explored in the future.
Did any other, when you were doing what you were doing with St. Vincent and Grenadines, did any other cricket association presidents, whatever it might be, approach you and say, "Let me see what you're doing"? Did that ever happen in terms of some synergy and saying, "Let me learn from what you're doing here, because maybe I can take this back to TTCB or BCA or JCA or whatever it might"? Did any of that ever happen?
Well, let me bring a more recent example. And this is not even at the SVG, well, still SVGCA. As you would, you are well read and you research a lot, Marshall. So I'm sure you're aware that in the pandemic, St. Vincent was the first place to have
Mm-hmm.
competitive cricket globally.
Yeah.
I was the president then,
Yeah.
right? And we started the T10 tournament. And this is probably the biggest success story for any regional cricket association, the T10 on the VPL. And what we have generated then, the understanding for the VPL, a T10 format, because we did have persons saying, well, oh, T10 tournament, this is not good for development of cricket in the region and so on. And what I was saying to them then, that this has tremendous potential from a commercial perspective, right? And if you want to increase the popularity of the sport as well, this is exactly what we need, right? And we set off and we put together a plan as an executive local association, and it materialized beyond expectations, right? It's exceeded expectations, Marshall. Um, and that model, right? Every year we just completed the fourth edition,
Yep.
where I remain very close to the SVGCA, and in fact I'm the tournament director now since I left office for the SVGCA, and where that tournament has grown is absolutely unbelievable, right? But what I did even as the president then, and what I continue to do up until very recently, was introduce all the other presidents, most of the original presidents, to this model, and said to them that, listen, I know we are all short on resources. This is an opportunity for you to increase your resources, right? I showed them our model and where persons probe and ask for more details. I was very free in giving them, everything that and so where I introduced, I presented them with our model, and so I'm so happy to see that a few have embraced this. We have seen it in the Windwards with St. Lucia and Grenada. They have
Trinidad just had one.
Trinidad
Jamaica's started today, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm aware that that a couple others are due to start this year as well. So that is one of the areas. One thing that I would say that I've said to them, because the greatest challenge for us in the region as administrators, cricket administrators, is obviously resources, limited resources. And with an opportunity like that, then it could certainly strengthen the development of cricket, because whatever revenue is generated from that T10 tournament would benefit or help to improve the development of cricket.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think obviously with the Vinci Premier League leading the way, I think the thing that has stood out for me, I think so. The winners this year, was it Bay Island? Can't remember there.
In St. Vincent, I think. St. Vincent, it was Loss of Hikers.
Sorry, I'm thinking of the
Spice Island
one. Sorry, sorry. But what's been interesting to me seeing each of the T10 tournaments, and this is what I keep trying to say about people who are not negative towards it, but maybe suspicious, is that it's allowing, to me, any cricket is good cricket in terms of exposure. And there are players, because one of my biggest criticisms of cricket in our region, not enough cricket is actually played. So the T10 tournament offers another level of exposure. So I was just looking at the Jamaica one, which obviously has just started, and so Jermaine Blackwood is playing it, Brandon King is playing in it, Canal, all of them are playing in it, and it helps a younger player coming up through the Jamaica system as, I don't know, a promising 17, 18-year-old who normally would be nowhere near the chosen 13-man squad for the 4-day season or Super 50 season, whatever it might be, just get some exposure on a more regular basis alongside an international player like a Brandon King. And to me, that's no bad thing. So it's a model that I'm very much behind.
Well, Marshall, in addition to that, right? I mean, you're talking of the experience of learning from senior players on the field. I've seen from edition 1 to 4 where person's game has, gone to a different level, because they're now, the game is rapid. I mean, 10 overs is fast pace, but they're learning match awareness. So imagine when they go into T10 to T20 tournament and then ODIs, 50 overs, right? they have already understand, they will have a better understanding of these formats. But for me, the greater good day, right, is looking in the stands and seeing families again at cricket. Young boys, young girls enjoying cricket with their family, right? That to me is absolutely necessary, right? Because we're talking about the popularity of the sport. And when you can do these things locally and have young players aspiring to be on a local stage, not even the West Indies stage yet, but on a local stage, then that for me is a big win for cricket in the region.
Most definitely. If we fast forward a bit, although actually it kind of is a good segue because it kind of does lead to what I'd say next. So with the Windward Islands Cricket Board now, so you are the serving president of the WICB at the same time, and I want to briefly talk on. So I'm just trying to remember. I think it was 2 months ago. You had your retreat for in St. Lucia.
Yes.
And I was reading a bit of press around that afterwards, and I was very intrigued. And for those who are listening to this or watching this on the screen, whatever medium you're choosing to take this in, I'll just read some points out, if you bear with me, Kishore. So these were some of the points that came out of, I'm going to focus on the cricket points, not even the governance ones, the cricket ones. So 12 elite female players will be put on 6-month retainers. In the first instance, there will be 3 per country with the assignment of a paid coach for each group. A new role to lead the cricket component of WICB was created, the technical director, which I believe is Miles Bascom. Additionally, the role of operations manager, development officer was created for each island. There will be bilateral series across the Windward Islands for emerging players. The Advancing Cricketers Through Education, ACE program, will be expanded to accredited courses, and a full calendar of tournaments and activities for introduction of competitive cricket following the pandemic, and these will be across the age levels for male and female. Now, I read that, and I read some of the press that came out of the retreat, and you may think that I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but I read that and thought, now this is a forward-thinking cricket board in terms of forget Cricket West Indies. I don't care actually about Cricket West Indies right now. I'm talking regionally from island to island, country to country. I thought this is a forward-thinking cricket board, and then following that, I saw that. Was it the under-19 Windward Island ladies went to play America or the United States?
We hosted them.
The USA came here. The USA went to the Windwards. There's currently, it may have now finished actually, the T20 series between the under-19s Windward Islands teams and TNT, the ladies as well. And what I'm trying to get at, Kishore, is to me, this is how we move cricket forward. And again, the reason why I say forget Cricket West Indies, I know Cricket West Indies has overall oversight of cricket within the region, but I've always believed that we can't move cricket forward if individual boards aren't willing to be proactive as well themselves and not just kind of wait to be told now do this or now do that. So talk me through, or again, I guess it depends on your perception, though, because to me, it's forward thinking. You may think with your business hat on, no, this is just basics. But talk me through what you're trying to achieve with the WICB.
Well, again, is being in a position to utilize your resources and put it to good use. At the end of the day, ultimately, we are a cricket organization, and we have to be creative in finding those revenue that are important to driving cricket development. And whenever we do have the revenue, then we have to spend it wisely. And so we have access to some resources now that we believe that we must utilize well. And one of the areas I believe that needs serious attention is obviously female cricket, especially. I mean, our men cricket too, but their programs are already set. But our under-19 cricket for female, it's way behind, and not necessarily way behind the other islands, but way behind the wall, right? So and I speak this. I think most of my colleagues, my fellow presidents across the West Indies, for territorial boards, they would agree that the under-19 program is way behind as well. And I'm seeing passionate young ladies. There are a few administrators too in women cricket who are extremely passionate, but over the years, they have not been given the resources,
Mm.
right, to strengthen that area. And I sold it to my board, Windward's board, that this is an area that we have to do better in. I took responsibility and said we have not done well enough for women cricket in Windward Islands, and we have to put some investment there. So much so that I started by, as the president of Windwards, I offer each individual island grant
Yeah.
where they can come up with a program specifically for female. And once they submit a proposal, a committee was formed, including myself. And once they submitted that proposal and we approve it, then they receive the funds instantly, right? What this did, apart from them getting money as well, is that administrators had to take the time to come up with program, because they had to do a proper proposal, right, with rationale and budget and everything. And so it gave them some time to actually reflect on female cricket and identify areas in the national in the respective countries across the Windward Islands where they can improve some aspect of female cricket, right? And I think they all, by and large, brought into it and understood exactly where I was coming from in terms of advancing female cricket.
Mm.
And it's good when you have like-minded people in your organization. That's only helped Dwayne Gill, who is director and acting CEO, Miles Bascom, and these other directors. They fully on board, and so it was an easy sell to them to tell them we have to advance female cricket. And now it's about rolling out, following up on these programs, these tours. So when these young ladies go on these tours, they must have coaches in the other islands, ensuring that they continue their training program, ensure that it's consistent at the same standard across the islands as well. And I would really love to see this done across the other territories. Trinidad and Tobago, they have probably been leading in terms of having a structured program, female program, for years. And so it was good that we were able to get a tour with them so easily. And I expect more of these bilateral arrangements. I'm understanding now that there are one or two other bilateral series being initiated across the other territories, and that could only mean well for female cricket. And naturally, there's I think the majority of the resources are already being spent in men's cricket, right? So just having some shift to female cricket, I think, is very necessary.
And then something, and I wonder, I mean, before we started recording, I mentioned this to you, but the ACE program. Now, in England, we have something called the ACE program, which is about engagement for Afro-Caribbean or African, well, essentially black players, because of the kind of disappearance of Afro-Caribbean African players within the county cricket game. But ACE means something else in the Windward Islands context, regarding, and you referenced it earlier on when you spoke about you're a big believer in education going alongside the cricket. Now, the reason why I want you to talk about the ACE program is, again, because to me, when I first read about it, actually, do you know what it reminded me of? The old HPC program out of Barbados. I think there was, I think when they had that program, was it Cave Hill? There was a lot of cricket education in there. Maybe not. I don't know if it's a parallel with what the ACE program is here, but I remember HPC talking about the need to have an cricket education alongside learning your cricketing skills. So just talk for those who don't know, and there'll be a lot who won't know what the ACE program is all about.
Yeah, well, it's meant to be a comprehensive program based on academics. What we thought was necessary was to have our players, develop into better, all-around players. Holistic development, really, right, is what we want to offer to them. So we decided to start with our franchise players who are based in Grenada, in the Windward Islands, of course. They're based in Grenada. So we have a group of players there who are contracted to CWI, right? Obviously, to the volcano Windward's volcanoes. And we thought that if we can have courses in between, so not every day they go on the cricket field, but have some structured classroom time where they learn about different aspects of life, right? We thought that would help them, it help with self-esteem, it would build their confidence and so on. And they would even be thinking life after cricket too, right? Because at some point they have to transition to other aspects of life. And we just thought that every player is not going to go on to international level and play for West Indies, but they should be better human being, better prepared for the rest for the world after cricket as well, right? And obviously throughout their career, the broader their scope is in life, the more developed they are in other aspect of financial management, better communicators, and all these different areas, life skill areas really, then they'll be better players as well, right? So it was, again, it was something that I strongly believe in. I actually, drafted the program and got my CEO and vice president of Windwards and Miles and a couple others to add to it, and then we sold it to the entire board, right? And it was well received, and so far it has started. The players are participating in it. But I think this has a greater scope, Marshall. I think this is something that, and we have discussed it, where we could have actual courses accredited, right, by universities and other institutions across the region, where they could actually have this package for players. And so this, what I've said to these guys, to the administrators in the win, was that, listen, we have an opportunity here to make this a model for the rest of the region to adopt, but this would only help the players, during their career and after their career. And so far, like I said, it has been well received.
So we've spoken a lot about what's going on within the Windward Islands region. So then if we look more holistically now then at Cricket West Indies, and obviously you've been in post now as VP since 2019, re-elected again alongside Ricky in 2021, with another year to go effectively before questions get asked about what's next, which I won't ask. But that notwithstanding, Ricky has come on the podcast and spoken about kind of like cricket first, cricket centric model that his leadership of Cricket West Indies has really been about. But I'm going to ask you a different question. You're 2.5 years in, maybe coming up to 3 years in, at kind of like the top table of Cricket West Indies. Two of those years were pandemic, so that doesn't help. But what would you say, as things currently stand, are the things you're happy about? So I'm focused on you and your perspective of things. The things that you're happy about that you've managed to achieve in your tenure alongside Ricky. And then also the flip side to that is, what do you still see as barriers to surmount or to overcome in order to leave, let's call it, a legacy of improvement in the regional game, where the average fan could look at that 4-year stretch and go, well, you know what, Skerritt and Shallow, they were responsible for X. Now, I could give you an answer immediately, but I'm trying to put it on you to see what you would say to the ordinary fan. I'm intrigued to see what you would say.
Well, I will start with finance. My background is finance, right, in my professional life. And I was quite surprised and disappointed, even though I was a director for a couple of years before being the vice president, of the financial system we had in place, right? It's no way that an organization like Cricket West Indies, right, should have been operating the way we were for the last for a few years, right? At least to my knowledge. And that to me is a major accomplishment, where we have been able to put prudent financial practices in place, right? And so much so we have stabilized, that component of West Indies cricket, where administrators, shareholders, and even players and other stakeholders could have more confidence in our system, right? That to me was extremely critical. It's like, and I try to keep things as simple as possible, Marshall. Now, just imagine you're running your home and you have no structure that you every time a dollar comes into your home, it just leaks into something because somebody just squandering or just being spent without any proper accountability and so on, right? And I mean, you're never going to have enough because it's almost pointless making more money because the
Mm.
same thing is going to happen. You're just going to be drained and not going to be spent in the right areas, so you're not investing in your future, you're not investing in your children education. And that if you could just look at that, and that is how West Indies cricket was being managed
Mm.
prior to 2019, at least for that, you know at least for that period that I know of. And again, reaching this stage now where we have very competent financial managers in place, and doing the utmost to ensure the organization is operating like a professional organization. I think that is an accomplishment of the field that we can't speak of enough because we are so focused on cricket. And if
Mm.
we move to cricket now, I mean, we have started in 2019. President Ricky has said from the very start, we are a cricket-centric organization and we must operate that way. In fact, that is one of the things why I gravitated to Ricky as a running mate because of
Mm.
his passion for cricket. He's player centric as well, and I think that was very important at the time. I myself is probably a little easier, probably natural to me, especially now because of my age, where I can relate to the players and
Mm.
so on. But to have a cricket centric organization in this time was critical to having players commit to Cricket West Indies and wanting to play for Cricket West Indies, right? Understanding their issues, understanding their challenges, the opportunities that they get, and so on. It was easy for me to have that conversation with them as well, obviously, so to Ricky. And then came the pandemic, which wasn't very long after. But it is so great that we were already on that part of a cricket-centric organization that when the pandemic hit, we were still, saying that we have to continue ensuring that cricket remains our priority,
Mm.
right? And we obviously had those tours. We even got some stick for them, saying, well, we probably shouldn't have gone here, we shouldn't have gone there,
Yeah.
right? But much credit to Ricky. He was very firm and said, listen, we have to ensure that these guys, these cricketers, this is their life, this is how they live. We have to ensure that they play cricket. And good sense prevailed, I believe, in the end. We got to play cricket. And playing cricket in this pandemic, it has not been easy. There are
Mm.
tremendous challenges, financial and otherwise. We have seen where players, tested positive, unavailable. It's just tremendous effort it has taken to have cricket in the pandemic, and that is such an accomplishment. I mean, it's something that you can't measure, right? In terms of just having cricket played. That obviously the pandemic and all has brought great challenges with increase in our commercial revenue as well, commercial activities. But it's work in progress, and I think we are closer to the end of the pandemic than the start. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed, of course. And now we could actually explore a bit more and realize even more opportunities that's out there. But I would say both off and on the field, we have had tremendous success. Going to Bangladesh and winning these recent series against England. And I think having players also in a place where they do have confidence in the leadership of CWI, that too is an incredible achievement.
And then if you had to say, okay, over the next year and a half or year, let's call it a year actually, if there was one thing you could, let's call it your wish list. If there's one thing you'd be like, this is the one thing I want us to be able to sort out and have in place a year from now. I'm not saying you must hold, I'm not holding you to it, but if there was if you could put one thing to the top of your wish list and say, I wish we could sort this by this time next year, what would you go for?
But I'll tell you what, we have started it and we have achieved some level of success so far, but it's not visible yet to the public for obvious reason that it will take some time. Our coaching system, right?
Mm.
We what we'll say is taking place currently is a revolution with our coaching, right? Where we have hired, where we have recruited a full-time staff, Chris Brabazon from Australia, and he has been leading this coaching system across the West Indies, the Caribbean, where he is upskilling people to coach and to deliver, cricket structured program to be obviously to teach young developing players and even senior players as well, right? That has been tremendous in rolling that out. It obviously going to take some time, right? But where we are now, where we from where we started, pandemic and all, I think I mean much credit to the organization and for the territorial boards who by and large have really embraced that program as well, because we cannot run from the reality. And when we look, and I tend to challenge and engage my colleagues in cricket administration across the region, that we have to always be honest with ourselves, and that is the only how we are going to improve. And I think I certainly, Ricky, and most of our administrators across the region in cricket, they admit that we have a gap in coaching, right? There's great limitation there in coaching over the years, right? Structured coaching in terms of where the game currently is and where it's going, right? And if we don't improve that component, we're going to be left behind. Now, we have always had extremely talented individuals, cricketers, that we are known for producing them, right? But game has changed so drastically, people studying you every single move, everything you play one game, and sometimes even before you play a game, Marshall, your opposition already have you line up to know your strengths and your weaknesses. And so, we need players not waiting until you reach at the international level to iron out your technique, being an elite player. But you have to be able to have your proper technique established from junior level, so if possible by the under 19 level, but certainly by the time you reach regional cricket at the senior level, you should have a game a certain stage that whenever you go into an international step, your learning curve should not be so steep. And that could only be done if you have good structured coaching at every level in the Caribbean. And that is something that we have been championing since 2019, and it continues to be a priority, and it's really bearing fruits so far.
Well, you can't get any more comprehensive in the answer than that. Listen, Kishore, we're coming up to an hour, and we could still keep talking.
It seems as though we just started, Marshall.
This conversation has only just got going. But in the interest of making sure that we don't go too long, I've got just a couple more questions that everybody gets asked these questions, but one more before I go to the way we always end with any guest that comes on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. So let me think of how I phrase this question now. Are you going anywhere in West Indies cricket, Kishore, or do you plan to? If it was up to you, would you plan to be around for some time yet? Let me phrase the question like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of I think you so far you're leading in terms of the way you phrase that question.
I won't say anything. I won't say anything further then. No, I will end the episode the way I always end it though. So we always ask any guest that comes on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast the following questions. So question number one, Kishore, who is the best batter you have either played with or seen in your time in West Indies cricket?
Easy answer for me. The person who I grew up, idolizing and looking at as the best batsman ever, and obviously because of my generation as well, where I started watching cricket, would be Brian Lara.
That relatively straightforward one. And best bowler?
Best bowler, best West Indian bowler.
West Indian, yeah.
Yeah, I would say Courtly Ambrose.
Why Kirtley? Because you have a lot of options there. Why Kirtley?
Yeah, Courtly because obviously I always love his aggression. He always made things happen, even when he and Courtney Ward were playing together, and Courtney was taking more wickets than him. Most times than not, you would probably credit Courtly for some of those wickets, and they had a fantastic partnership. But I've seen where some games where probably you probably say, well, now West Indies is not going to win, and just knowing that Courtly is there and he's fighting right down to the last delivery of the match, he's going to bring it outside. So because of his fighting spirit, and I mean, he's just a fantastic bowler, and I would say he's certainly one of the greats that I have seen. Right, I'm obviously speaking from my era of watching cricket. And I'm hoping I don't receive too much stick for it, but I will just remind people I'm only 38, so don't take it back too far.
You won't receive stick for that answer, but you will for your next one. This is the final question.
Let's say this one.
Having obviously you're part of Cricket West Indies, you travelled around the Caribbean watching cricket. What is the best ground to watch cricket at in the Caribbean? And the only thing you're not allowed to do is you're not allowed to name anywhere in the Windward Islands. So anywhere outside of the Windward Islands, what is the best ground to watch cricket at in the Caribbean?
I think Barbados would have to be it. Barbados is a fantastic place to look at cricket. I was there during the T20 series against England for that series that we won. And just even though it was obviously probably 80% English fans, right? Just the whole energy that when they chant and they scream, everything you were just hearing it. I also played there before, so even as a player and then as a spectator, it's a fantastic atmosphere, and the pride that they take in that place as well. I would have to say that is an easy answer for me. Kensington Oval.
Well, I can't say anything about the answer. I'll leave people who want to get back to us in the comments about what they feel about that particular answer there. But Kishore, that brings an end to the episode. Like I said, we could keep going and chat more about cricket and cricket administration, etc. But I just want to say, on behalf, obviously, of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on the podcast and talk cricket with us. I believe that there was a lot in there for people to listen to and get a hold of. And what I always say about guests who come on who work in cricket administration in the region is you're giving us more of an open eye to the logistics of running cricket, because like it or not, as fans, it's easy for us to criticize because we don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. So that's why we have platforms like this, to allow people like yourself to say, well, this is the reality, this is what we're working with, and so on and so forth. But I'll give you the final words, Kishore. But thank you from me for coming on.
No, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be on your show, Marshall. I sorry Santoki wasn't able to be here with us this time, but I'm sure next time he'll be around. But it's really a great platform. Any platform at all that promotes cricket, especially in a positive light, I'm really grateful to be a part of. And I mean, I often say that this thing of moving Cricket West Indies forward it has to be an inclusive approach where every stakeholder of West Indies cricket, has to play their part, and you continue to play a vital part, and I thank you for that. And again, I enjoy the show. I mean, and next time we'll have another hour chat or so. There's still a lot to discuss.
Most definitely. You're going to have to come back for part 2. But ladies and gentlemen, that's been episode 64 of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.